Brazil, the fifth largest country on Earth, a nation of 215 million people spread across the Amazon rainforest, the Atlantic coast, the Pantanal wetlands, and the vast southern plains of the Gauchos. And most people think Brazilian food is just steak. It is so much more than that. Brazil's cuisine was built by three civilizations layered on top of each other. The indigenous people of the Amazon who gave the world cassava, Açaí, and Guaraná, the enslaved Africans who brought palm oil, black-eyed peas, and the art of the slow-cooked stew, and the Portuguese colonizers who added salted meats, sugarcane, and the cheese bread that 215 million Brazilians still eat every single morning. The result is one of the most diverse, joyful, emotionally layered food cultures on the planet, and a dessert invented during a presidential election campaign that became the most beloved candy in Brazil's history. This is every Brazilian dish explained. Feijoada, the soul of a nation in a pot. Feijoada. Say it slowly. It deserves the respect. Brazil's national dish. A thick, intensely dark black bean stew slow-cooked with smoked sausage, salted pork ribs, cured beef, pork ears, and trotters. Every cut of the animal that has flavor. Every cut that requires patience and time to become tender and magnificent. The beans turn the broth almost black, thick as velvet, deeply smoky and savory. Served with white rice, sautéed collard greens, farofa, toasted cassava flour, nutty and slightly crunchy, and sliced oranges. The orange is not decoration. The citric acid cuts through the richness of the fat, cleanses the palate, and makes room for the next spoonful. The origin of feijoada is one of food's great historical debates. The most widely told story says enslaved Africans on the sugar plantations were given the parts of the pig their masters didn't want, the ears, feet, snout, tail, and cooked them slowly with the black beans that were the only protein available to them. What their masters threw away, they transformed into a national treasure. Recent historians question this version. They point out that in 18th century Portugal, pig offal was not scrap, it was prized. That feijoada closely resembles the Portuguese cozido, a slow-cooked meat and bean stew eaten by the wealthy. The truth, as always, sits somewhere in the middle. Churrasco, fire, meat, and a gaucho soul. Churrasco, the southern state of Rio Grande do Sul, vast grasslands, the pampas stretching to the horizon, shared with Argentina and Uruguay. Here, the gauchos, the South American cowboys, lived on horseback, driving cattle across the plains for months at a time. They had no kitchens, no refrigeration, no choice. When a cow was slaughtered, all the meat had to be cooked immediately. They drove long wooden skewers through enormous cuts of beef and held them over wood fire embers until the fat dripped and flared, the outside charred and crackling, the inside still pink and bleeding. No marinade, no sauce, nothing but coarse sea salt and the smell of smoke and grassland. The cut that defined Brazilian churrasco is the picanha, the rump cut muscle, marbled with a thick layer of fat on one side, skewered in a horseshoe shape so the fat renders slowly during cooking, basting the meat beneath it. When sliced against the grain and laid across your plate, tender, slightly smoky, intensely beefy, picanha is one of the finest things you can eat. Today, Brazilian churrascarias export this experience to the entire world. Waiters move through the restaurant carrying enormous sword-like skewers of meat, picanha, fraldinha, costela, linguiça, slicing directly onto your plate in a continuous parade that does not stop until you turn your table's card from green to red. It is without a question the most theatrically satisfying way to eat beef ever designed. Pão de Queijo, the world's greatest cheese bread. Pão de Queijo, Pão de Queijo, cheese bread, the two most important words in the Brazilian breakfast vocabulary. Small, golden brown, slightly crisped at the surface, pulling apart to reveal an impossibly stretchy, gooey, chewy interior that snaps back like warm mozzarella. The smell, warm, yeasty, intensely cheesy, fills any room it enters. Made not from wheat flour, but from polvillo, tapioca starch derived from cassava, which is why Pão de Queijo is naturally gluten-free, not by design, by accident of history. It originated in the state of Minas Gerais in the 18th century, when enslaved workers processed cassava root and discovered that the starch, when mixed with local queijo Minas cheese, eggs, and milk and baked, created something unlike anything in the world. Today, it is eaten at every hour in every context, with coffee at 7 a.m., as a snack at a gas station at noon, at the airport, at a wedding, at a football match. Brazilians eat pão de queijo the way the French eat baguettes, constantly, reflexively, as if eating them is simply part of being alive. Moqueca, the coast's living history. Moqueca, Moqueca, a seafood stew from a northeast coast of Brazil and one of the most emotionally complex dishes on earth. The Baiana version, Moqueca Baiana, is built on West African culinary tradition. Firm white fish, prawns, or both, slow-cooked in a glazed clay pot called a panela de barro, with coconut milk, dendê oil, a bright orange palm oil brought from Africa that gives the stew its signature color, garlic, onions, tomatoes, and fresh coriander. The dendê oil turns the broth a deep, burning amber. The coconut milk softens everything into something silky and rich. The fish flakes at the touch of a fork after barely 15 minutes. Served with white rice and pirão, a thick porridge made by stirring fish broth into manioc flour until it becomes the consistency of polenta. The pirão absorbs everything. Here is the history in every spoonful. The fish came from the Atlantic, the coconut milk came from Portuguese colonial trade routes, the dendê oil came from enslaved West Africans who planted palm trees along Brazil's northeast coast, the same trees that still grow there today. Every ingredient in moqueca is a chapter of Brazilian colonial history. The neighboring state of Espírito Santo makes their version without dendê, using olive oil instead, lighter in color, more delicate in flavor. The two states have argued over whose moqueca is authentic for over a century. Both are right. Acarajé, street food born from resistance. Acarajé, Salvador, Bahia, the most African city outside of Africa. Black-eyed peas soaked overnight, ground into a thick batter, seasoned with salt and dried shrimp, then dropped into a wok of smoking hot dendê oil, where they puff and swell and turn deep golden at the surface with a crackling crust that gives way to a soft, savory, faintly nutty interior. Split in half while stir-hot, stuffed with vatapá, a dense spiced paste of bread, coconut milk, ground peanuts and dried shrimp, and caruru, okra cooked down with palm oil and peanuts. Acarajé is not just food, it is a secret offering. The dish originates directly from the Yoruba people of West Africa, brought to Brazil through the slave trade. In the candomblé religion, Brazil's African-rooted spiritual tradition, acarajé is offered to Iança, the goddess of storms and winds. The women who sell acarajé on the streets of Salvador, the Baianas, dress in white lace and turbans. Their recipes are passed from mother to daughter across generations. Brigadeiro. Born from an election loved by a nation, Brigadeiro, Brazil's most beloved candy, and it was invented to win a presidential election. Brazil holds its first election in which all women could vote. The candidate is Air Force Brigadier Eduardo Gomes, handsome, charismatic, a war hero. His female supporters wanted to raise money for his campaign. Condensed milk was cheap and widely available because of wartime rationing. Cocoa powder and butter completed the recipe. Women cooked the mixture low and slow until it thickened into a dense, glossy, fudgy mass, then rolled it into small balls and covered them in chocolate sprinkles. They sold them at campaign rallies. They called them brigadeiros after their candidate. Eduardo Gomes lost the election. The brigadeiro became immortal. 3 ingredients: condensed milk, cocoa, butter, cooked until it barely moves in the pan, rolled warm between palms, coated in sprinkles that catch in the coating like stars. Cold from the fridge, dense, creamy, intensely chocolatey, dissolving slowly. At room temperature, a soft, almost fluid at the center. No Brazilian birthday party exists without a tray of brigadeiros. No celebration, no graduation, no wedding. They are shaped by hand by every Brazilian grandmother, every child at a cooking class, every mother the night before a party. They are the taste of Brazilian childhood, of joy. Caipirinha and Amazon, liquid Brazil. Caipirinha, Brazil's national cocktail. Cachaça, a spirit distilled from fermented sugarcane juice, raw and grassy and fierce, muddled with fresh lime, white sugar, and ice until the lime releases its oil into the spirit and the sugar dissolves into something bright, tart, and dangerously refreshing. It began as a medicinal drink. Farmers in the early 20th century mixed cachaça with lime and garlic as a home remedy for the Spanish flu. The garlic eventually disappeared. The lime stayed. Brazil got its national drink. One caipirinha leads immediately to a second. The second leads to dancing. This is not a warning. This is an instruction. Açaí, the Amazon's most powerful export. A dark purple berry, almost black, harvested from the tall açaí palm trees that line the rivers of the Amazon basin. Indigenous communities have eaten açaí for centuries, not as a smoothie bowl topped with granola, but as a thick, unsweetened pulp mixed with cassava flour, eaten alongside fish as a savory meal. Deeply filling, deeply nutritious, tasting faintly of berries and dark chocolate and earth. The world discovered açaí in the 1990s. It went global. The sweetened, fruit-topped bowl version you know from health food cafes is a Western interpretation. In the Amazon, açaí is simply dinner. Guaraná, a fruit native to the Amazon, small, red, with black seeds that stare out like eyes, containing more caffeine per gram than coffee. Indigenous Amazonian tribes used it for energy, for focus, for ritual. Today, it is the flavor of Brazil's most popular soda, sweet, faintly fruity, unlike anything else, sold in every corner shop, every gas station, every beach kiosk. More Brazilians drink Guaraná soda than Coca-Cola, the Amazon's answer to every other energy drink on Earth. Brazil was built by three peoples who did not choose to be together. The indigenous people who understood the land, the enslaved Africans who cooked in the plantation kitchens and poured their culture, their religion, and their resistance into every pot, and the Portuguese who arrived and changed everything, and were in turn changed by everything they found. Out of that history, brutal, complicated, unfinished, came Feijoada and Moqueca and Acarajé, came Pão de Queijo, Brigadeiro, and Caipirinha. Brazilian food is not just delicious, it is evidence. Evidence that people can take suffering and scarcity and longing and turn it into something that brings an entire nation to the table. Every Saturday, every birthday, every beach, every celebration. Bon appetit.